Shabbat Shalom, everybody. If you've been away, welcome back. I was here last week, but now I'm really back. So it's good to be back here. And thank you all for your flexibility as we are wandering Jews from one room to another. But eventually we will find our way back to our sanctuary, which is being refurbished. So in that spirit this morning, as we are looking forward to Rosh Chodesh Elul, the month that brings in the new year, I want to raise the larger question, what is it that each of us can control in our own lives and in the world? So if I ask you, what can you actually control, you may find yourself struggling to find something in your life over which you have control, much less the rest of the world. Deanna and I, as I mentioned, were in Israel for a little bit over a week at the beginning of July. And just to give an example, we booked the flight on El Al, which is what I recommend because other airlines tend to cancel. Some of us have been in that situation. If anybody's flying, El Al is flying, okay? So we booked the flight, and of course we sat and we wondered, what's going to be? Obviously, the situation with Iran is very unstable and volatile. And so we wondered, would the flight even occur altogether? And then we got on the flight and we said, okay, well, we booked ourselves a row where it's just the two of us. So great. We controlled where we were going to sit, because sometimes the person sitting in the middle or the person sitting on the side has, just certain ways of conducting themselves that are not so great. And so we said, terrific, we're in control. And maybe a half an hour into the flight, the guy sitting in front of Deanna moved his chair back. But when I say back, I mean he was ready for bedtime and completely disregarding the fact that another human being who has knees was sitting behind him. So I started this whole conversation with him in Hebrew, and I said something to the effect of, very nice to meet you. I hope you have a good flight. I said, this isn't Versailles. I mean, there's a limited amount of space here. And he said to me, Ani ayef, I'm tired. So one instance of a little situation where you try to control an outcome, and obviously, no matter what you do, there are things that are beyond your control. So, of course, the Parsha opens up, see, this day I set before you a blessing and a curse. Et habracha asher tishme'un. There is the blessing if you listen, and the curse if you do not. And the children of Israel are told to choose the blessing. So can we, in fact, choose blessing? It's a really fascinating question. To what extent can we exercise control over our own lives? Now, of course, many of us say that the one thing that we can control is our own behavior. We can control ourselves. We can control, what do you say to the guy whose chair is extending itself a little bit too much, or whatever else. We can control, how we eat. We can control certain aspects of our health, etc. But really, there are many things that are hard. We have a nature. Some of us have a certain nature where we might be cynical or pessimistic. And if people say to us, cheer up, look on the bright side, that's just not how we are wired. So there is much that can impact even our own behavior, our personalities, how we are wired, not to mention other people. So I want to share with this larger group something which I shared last week, Saturday evening, and that is a statement by Maimonides, the great medieval scholar Rambam, about human nature, and in his mind, a fallacy whereby we claim that we cannot control who we are because it is predetermined. So he says it in extremely bold language, and his Hebrew is magnificent. Al ya'avor b'machshavatecha davar zeh she'omrim tipshei umot ha'olam verov golmei b'nei Yisrael. So I have to euphemize a little bit because it's really, really harsh. He says, don't fall prey to foolish behavior, to foolish ideas that the rest of the nations have and that some Jews have as well. And what are those foolish ideas? What is that foolish concept? Namely, Shakadosh Baruch Hu gozer al ha'adam mitchiyat briyato liyot tzadik or rasha. That God decrees about each person whether they're going to be righteous or wicked. Don't say that. Don't say that God made me this way. I am this way because that is how God has created me. But rather, Kol Adam Ra'ui Lo Lihiyot Tzadik Kimoshe Rabbeinu or Rasha Kiyorav Am. Every person can choose to be righteous like Moses or evil like one of the evil kings. And we can similarly choose to be chacham or sachal, wise or foolish, rahman or achsari, compassionate or cruel, keli or shua. We can choose to be cheap or we can choose to be generous, and on and on. He said the choice is ours. It is not predetermined. So I want us to think about that because he is really harsh and he's really pushing back against the excuse that we use. I am the way I am. The older I get, the more I am this way. Don't try to change me. This is who I am. So in that context, I just want to make a couple of observations, 3 actually. So first is that we have more independence over our own actions than we imagined. It was up to me to determine whether or not to say something to the person sitting in front of us and how I framed it. That was up to me. It is up to us to determine whether or not we're going to have the 3rd piece of cake at Kiddush or not. It is up to us to determine what we are going to do in terms of taking care of ourselves. It is up to us to determine if we are going to assert ourselves in a situation or just mumble, I should have said this afterward, and then carry our resentment with us. There is so much unfortunate behavior that we all do, myself included, again and again, instead of actually taking responsibility for trying to make a change. The second observation is that we have more influence over other people than we imagine. And you'll notice I did a little bit of a shift, and I used the word influence rather than control. I don't think we can control other people, though sometimes we really want to. But if we are fortunate and if we are wise, we can have influence over other people. I just this week, I had a conversation with my son who is a father, and he just mentioned that, they're going through what parents do at the beginning with their children not quite sleeping the way that they want them to sleep, okay? And you know what? I don't offer advice because we know if you are in this kind of a situation, I don't offer advice, right off the bat. But we had a conversation and there was an opening for me to just say yeah, interesting to think about how you set limits, but how you do it lovingly and all of that, to be able to influence an outcome. There are so many times where if we just listen, if we let things roll, if we don't jump in with a kind of, intensity in a clumsy way, that we can actually have influence. And the last observation is that we can have more influence over larger outcomes than we imagine. So without getting into all of the details, let's just say that there have been a bunch of elections that have gone on recently. And there's a lot of concern that many of us have. Do you know, by what margins the elections were won? Tiny margins. 500 people, 1,000 people could have made a difference in multiple outcomes. So what that means is that instead of sitting and saying, oy vey, vavela, the world is coming apart, right? Oh my God, what's going to be? We can mobilize. We have a lot more influence about wider situations than we imagine. And yes, it is human nature before the fact and after the fact to worry and blame and post and what God knows what. But if we are thoughtful, we can have influence will beyond ourselves. So there is the blessing, there is the curse. Can we choose? Can we control? And the answer I want to offer us as we are slowly entering the new year is far more than we think. Shabbat Shalom.